Oscar Brown Jr. was a writer, and he was a great poet, and I feel a great thinker. You know, he absorbed the images, the sounds, and things around him growing up on the south side of Chicago. And then he created great songs and even musical plays that reflected the lives of the people that he came in contact with.
Oscar's music was a combination of great music, rhythm, and yet his music carried a message.
He had a way of describing street life on the south side of Chicago. And he used that as a metaphor to talk about life's tragedies and, and sorrows and things of that nature.
The master wordsmith of the 20th century. I've never heard anybody have such mastery over the language in terms of meter and subject.
There was this fabulous creative soul, this wonderful musician. He was a lyricist, and he was a fabulous lyricist. He could put words together and put tunes and harmonies together, I think really like no other.
His music was like nothing I'd ever heard before. It was irreverent, it was funny, it was poignant, it was so intelligent. And he just danced to a different drummer, and I felt he had the courage of his convictions.
Rhythm speaking and the songs that he wrote reflected everything that you want in the African American community, especially the Chicago African American community. And he took that and he spread it all across the nation and throughout the world. A great talent and a great individual, and it's a real pleasure to be working with Morris now to try to keep the legacy of Oscar Brown Jr. alive.
There are things that my father wrote that, being a black man, they don't necessarily set well with people that are not African American and don't understand the African American experience, and people might take it as offensive, even though it wasn't meant to be offensive. It's an expression of what he's living through or what he's witnessing other people living through. And so I know that there are some songs of his that they're not as palatable to everybody.
Oscar was very much influenced by our history, the history of black people in slavery. And he did songs relative to that and to our push to become free. He was a freedom fighter from the time he got started at 15.
Oscar Brown Jr. had a piece of everybody who lived on the south side of Chicago, no matter what you did. The Iceman, the Ragman, everybody. You got Oscar. Oscar was there looking at you and writing about you, telling great stories about you.
Well, I just think the fact that he dared to create this music, that he was a nonconformist, he just was driven by the necessity to communicate what was in his heart and what he saw in the world.
Just being around him, it was like being with a profound race thinker and a visionary, a person who had an uncompromising view of what was right and wrong from a humanistic standpoint, not just from a racial standpoint, but what was politically correct and what was true and real is the space that Oscar generally stood in.
He was traveling one day in San Francisco, crossing the long bridge. I'm not sure, it might have been the Golden Gate Bridge, and he saw a column, a big column of just birds coming. I guess he'd never seen anything like that. He was actually witnessing the migration. And just from such a simple thing, he wrote a song that said, how did they get it together to take off as one and go race this column of birds of a feather off to some better place? How did they make the connection? How did they come to agree to fly in a single direction toward what not one of them could see? And in the end, he says, I wished our kind might take off somehow, like a column of birds. That, that faith that, we know we all have to go in this direction, so let's just head that way, And we believe we're going to get there, even though we can't see where there is.